Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming tonight as we hear from author Heather Havrilesky discuss her new book, Foreverland, on the Divine Tedium of Marriage. She's joined tonight by Carter Kersh. My name is Morella and I'm the Events and Social Media Coordinator here at Flyleaf Books, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming out tonight and purchasing a copy of Heather's book from us. If you didn't get a chance to purchase the book, feel free to support the story in any other way you'd like. Such acts help us continue bringing great programs like this one to you. To make our events more accessible, we are recording tonight's event and it will be up on our YouTube channel within the next following days. And finally, to be respectful and mindful of our colleagues, we ask that the authors conclude by 7 p.m. And now I'd like to introduce tonight's guests. First, we have Heather Havrilesky, who writes the popular Ask Polly advice column on Substack and is the author of What If This Were Enough? How to Be a Person in the World and Disaster Preparedness. She lives in Durham, North Carolina, with her husband, 2 daughters, and 2 dogs. And then we also have Carter Kersh, who is a husband, father, storyteller, and a marketing executive by day. Please give it up for them.
Okay, now they're on. All right, fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys for being here. I think you got it, but I'm Carter. And that's Heather.
Hello. Hi. Does it sound like...
do a check.
Okay, check. Should I put it higher up? Maybe a little higher?
Yeah.
Like up next to my face.
This is the most amazing microphone setup. We're wearing 2 microphones. So
We're very wired for sound. Can I be heard? Am I heard? You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't actually matter if you guys hear me. You really need to hear Heather.
One of them is for the recording.
Okay. As long as you can hear me. In the back, can you hear me?
We'll keep working.
Okay.
All right, hang on. I've done this before.
Hello, my name is Heather. Hello. This morning, I might have turned it off by sitting on it. Oops.
You did, yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
I should just hold it in my lap so I know I'm not going to smush it. Okay. Oh, yeah.
all right, fantastic.
It's my prerogative.
We can really hear you.
That's, now see, I don't know. That's not really
So we want to keep that back, right? It needs to be further away from.
Oh, it's Carter's.
Okay,
Try to.
you're fine.
You don't need to record me. Or hear me.
Every day is an adventure, and
Guys, welcome to COVID. We're having a beautiful time. I don't know who's worried about it. I think this is working. If you guys hear like a loud buzzing noise, just let us know.
Okay, so do I sound like, I sound,
You're off.
no,
Get it off.
I'm done. Did I turn this off? Did I turn it, do I need to, I shouldn't change anything though. I don't believe in changing things.
well, make sure we keep this down low so it doesn't get
Change is bad.
We have backups.
Okay,
Alright.
just microphone?
Yes. So now you have a handheld one.
I like handheld microphones.
All right. Thank you.
Now I'm Barbara Streisand. I'd like a white microphone, please. All right, this is better. I like this.
Thank you,
Can
Flyleaf.
you hear me now? Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right, are you guys ready to start?
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. We are still Carter and Heather. So Heather's going to read, and then we're going to ask some questions, and then they respectfully asked us to conclude by 7, but maybe we'll throw a curveball and have the audience ask some questions. You can just come up and lean into my microphone, and it'll work. But Heather, why don't you start us off?
I will. I'll start us off by reading. If at any time you stop being able to hear me in the back, you know, this is part of the chapter on my wedding, actually. Bill, one of his many crimes over the course of our marriage was that I told him specifically to definitely make sure, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, definitely make sure we have microphones for the wedding, right? And he was like, no, the microphones didn't stretch, it's too hot in the sun, there are no microphones at my wedding. And so I'm sitting at the front of the thing, and the only good part of the wedding was, all of the rest of it was bad, torture, turmoil. But anyway, the best part of the wedding was we wrote our own vows, which is very original, I know, and very unique. And they were so poetic and beautiful. And then we also did we did a bunch of weird things that were funny. And so there was one point where I could see the first 2 rows of people were like crying from the beauty of our words. And then the last 5 rows were just blinking like this. And I was like, motherfucker, they can't hear us. So I have a little paranoia around that. No. Okay, so I'm just going to read the beginning of the book because it's, I think, a very nice summary of the tone of the book, if you haven't read the book yet, which most of you presumably have not. Beginning. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Kevin Pinnell's stepmother.
Oh, holy shit.
I'm going way back later. I'm sorry to be late.
This thing is going
there.
exactly as planned.
Hauntings from the past. Dorian.
Doran, right.
Doran.
right.
Doran.
Good to see you, Heather.
So nice. Welcome. So glad to have you here. Kevin is my ex-boyfriend.
From high school, I was looking for a picture of the car.
You could have brought a whole slideshow.
I gotta listen to you read.
We'll pick that up later.
Does he have a chapter?
Oh my God, that's my next book, Ex-Boyfriends. I love them so. Okay. Welcome. So glad you're here. So this is the beginning of the book. Every book, I'm not going to read that much because there's a lot to talk about. Every book about marriage is also a book about mortality, since the success of any marriage is defined not by happiness or good fortune, but by death. The assignment, after all, is to stay together until you die. Once one spouse perishes, the marriage has succeeded. Death signals victory. Only an optimistic fool would declare victory before reaching the finish line. That's what makes weddings such dark comedies. What's more entertaining and ominous than watching 2 naive souls sign a binding contract without understanding the fine print? Most engaged couples bumble onto the marital bullet train without even knowing where it's headed. All that matters is that we'll be together, they whisper to each other. Forever is 2 immortal elves, sipping pink champagne by a burbling stream, then exploring the wild, gorgeous woods around them in everlasting harmony. Forever is set in New Zealand, not New Jersey. Muddling through the first year of marriage has a way of turning New Zealand back into New Jersey, changing pink champagne into a juice box, and transforming 2 immortal elves into lumpy humans with a rapidly approaching expiration date. Even after many satisfying years together, married life has an uncanny way of making even the most buoyant soul feel like a fool and a failure repeatedly. It's a feature, not a bug. Marriage is designed to break you. You will forget everything you knew before, You will tremble under the weight of your own shortcomings. Sure, you might bounce back and proclaim yourself lucky and declare your marriage happy and become the masochist your marriage wants you to be. But you'll still wake up plenty of mornings wondering why you signed on to drag this wretched, snoring heap of meat with you everywhere you go until the day you die. I think we should stop there.
Heather Havrilesky, ladies and gentlemen. How many people here are married? Just curious. Fantastic. All right, this is a fertile ground. We ready to go?
Yes.
There are so many things so many places that we could go, but books about marriage fall into either the fairy tale, the burbling elves, or the horror story. You stabbed your spouse in the middle of the night and you're writing from prison. I think those are really the only two options for marriage books. But yours is not either, and so I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about what you imagined the book to be, sort of why you did it, and what you wanted the book to do.
Oh, God. I think that the reason that I wrote the book was for, you basically summarized it pretty well, which is all of the books that I had read about marriage were either therapy books about marriage. I guess it depends on how avoidant you are and how touchy-feely you are. And I had a boyfriend once that really liked, not Kevin Pinnell. It wasn't Kevin Pinnell. He really liked this book. And it had some kind of like marriage wholeness. There was some kind of language that, I don't know, it was kind of about, I think it was about sex and marriage. And we were only dating, but we lived together. And he was learning to be, I can't go into detail, this is totally not, but the idea basically was that there was like this level of communion that we should be reaching that we weren't reaching. And I just could, I read like 3 sentences and I was like, so that's an avoidant person who reacts to a book about marriage that should help a relationship who reacts that way. But so there are books that are aimed at improving your marriage. There are books that are about marriages that still exist and are still alive, and therefore the book is sort of a gloss on, to me, a lot of the books by people who are still married. People aren't really allowed to say, yeah, I'm married, but I TikTok, I'm not really sure how long I will be. Or sometimes I really wish I weren't. People don't talk that way to each other. They don't, people are very, very protective of this subject.
Something like that, for sure.
Yeah, and then there are also books, obviously, about divorce that are sort of like, here's the torture I went through, and, I have a friend who's divorced, and she always says, all married people are miserable. They just don't tell you until they're divorced. Once you're divorced, all the divorced people get together, and we all talk about how marriage is a nightmare, and everyone's unhappy. And I'm like, I don't think my marriage is a nightmare. So then I had this idea that, like, Bill and I have such a great marriage that I'll help everyone by being super honest about it, what a nightmare it is to be married, even though you're so happy together and you're so perfect for each other and you're obviously 2 amazing people who belong together. That didn't really work out as intended. Now instead there is a book in the world about how terrible we are and how annoyed we are by each other and how much we love each other in spite of that. I'm happy with how the book came out, but it definitely was a ride trying to write this book because I sold it because I'm a good salesperson. And then I had to write it, and it kind of threw my marriage into crisis just writing a book about my marriage.
Is it like, I'm so fascinated to, we've known you, full disclosure, my wife and I, have known Heather and Bill, who is here tonight, also in full disclosure.
He'll be popping out of a cake later.
And we've seen you evolve, but like your notion of your own marriage, because you're writing about it, like it's like Schrodinger's cat. I might not have said Schrodinger, right? Okay, thank you. I got a nod. So, like, how did your view of your own marriage change because you were writing about the marriage?
Oh, well, at first, I needed to write about falling in love because I wanted to start from the beginning. And I didn't want to write about falling in love at all. It seemed gross and boring. I sort of wanted to skip to the conflict and the suspense and the funny things, like hating each other, which apparently not everyone thinks is that funny. So at first it was actually, it kind of put me in crisis because I thought, why don't I want to write about falling in love with my delightful husband? Why am I so turned off by that? And really I think that was like a superficial thing, like I just don't like books about people in love. And actually in the first, I think it's the second chapter, I write, watching two people fall in love, watching someone fall in love is like watching them eat a really sloppy, delicious submarine sandwich. The more satisfied and happy they are, the less you want to watch them eat it. So I sort of felt like, why am I doing this gross thing where I'm telling everyone how in love I am? I don't want to do that. So the first few drafts of the book were actually kind of dark. Even before I got cancer, they were just like, I was writing this book in kind of like a, oh my God, and then, having a wedding was terrible, and that was the worst. And then when we got engaged, ew, that was maybe the lowest point in our entire relationship. And unfortunately, at the beginning, when I was writing it, I sort of felt like, when I got to that part where I was complaining about how Bill proposed, I had this crisis of confidence where I was like, how is anyone going to make it past this chapter? It's so bleak that I'm like, this awful man is proposing the wrong way. Why am I saying? The thing is, in truth, I knew that I wanted to marry him. It wasn't that I was having a crisis of confidence around being with him for the rest of my life. It was just that I was being given this tour of what I was in for. I think that that's something that we don't talk about that much, which is like, you can be sure, absolutely sure. And in some ways, the more sure you are, the more the garden of horrors that appears to you. Like, Jesus Christ, I'm going to be doing this forever, literally until I'm dead. I'm going to see these things and hear these sounds. It's not possible. And to my credit, and Bill, I'm sorry about this, but Bill, when we did finally get engaged, he stopped. We were on a walk, and I was horrified because it was Christmas, and I really didn't want to get engaged at Christmas. And he turned to me awkwardly and said, "As you know, we've known each other for a long time now." And I just practically blacked out. I was like, what is wrong with this robot man?
That's not who I fell
terrible.
in love with.
But I do want to say that, Perry and Carter were sort of a model for me of a good marriage, and it included being very honest about the times when you wanted to wring each other's necks. And in fact, the guy with the marriage book who I was with, you guys have met a lot of my boyfriends, not Kevin Pinnell, they didn't meet Kevin Pinnell, but
the other three.
There was a time when I was thinking about, I was kind of unhappy in a relationship, and I showed up at Perry and Carter's house, and I said, Perry said, I called Carter at work the other day, and I said, hold it right there. You're allowed to call him at work? My boyfriend doesn't let me call him at work. And Perry said, well, I don't know. Well, really?
Well, he worked at a 1-900.
She said, really? I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't call Carter at work just the other day, the Christmas tree fell over and the baby started crying, and I called him and I said, "You have to come home right now." And I was like, "You told him to," and I was like, "And what did you do?" And Carter's like, "Oh, well, I came home." I was like, "Holy God Almighty!"
But when I got home, I turned to her and I said, "As you know."
As you may know, perhaps you don't. But I broke up with my boyfriend that night. I called him and said, "I've seen a good married couple, and we are not that." So they've been a model of how to be.
And
And look what you created.
we really liked that guy. So a lot about your evolution or thinking about your own marriage, like how did your view of marriage itself change as you did it? Like you had some idea of what a marriage could be, but now you're in it. Now you're in the muck. You had this idea maybe you could write something that would help people by being honest about it. Like you're now surveying the landscape of marriage. What do you begin to think about it? Like other marriages you see, or just like marriage itself? Like is it all of a sudden you're like, what an idiotic thing that we do?
Yeah.
Change?
I mean, I knew, part of the problem of being a writer, but also of the problem of being me in particular, and the kinds of humans like me, I suspect some of us are here together, is that, the last chapter of the book sort of goes into this. There's a kind of like re-litigation process that occurs every morning where I sort of re-understand why I've made the choices I've made. And there are mornings when the choices don't seem to add up, where I say, and I mean, I think this is really in stark contrast to what American culture at least tells us about how a person should be, right? We're not really meant, especially within a marriage, and certainly within most religions, when you are married, you don't turn to the person and ask yourself, you don't turn and look and smell and see, and then ask yourself, have I made good choices in my life, or have I made very, very poor choices? And do I really have to honor some messed up, twisted, random, patriarchal, property-based contract? Or should I follow joy to some other room in some other place with some new person, perchance? I did put my marriage under a microscope, but I also sort of, I did start to question the idea. I mean, I was thrilled the day that I wrote, "Oh, you have to stay together till you're dead. That's success." Like, how twisted is that?
That's so great, though.
And there was a line somewhere in the book that's like, the marriage dies or you die. Which ending seems happier?
Yeah.
I mean, it gets confusing. So yeah, I mean, I think that and then the other part of it was that some situations came into my life where I sort of felt like, it was almost like there was a lot of feeling that God was kind of tormenting me for even questioning marriage at all. This is the thinking of a former Catholic. It's like some people don't form these kinds of theorems about why they're suffering through the things they suffer through. But I sold the book, and immediately I went out to dinner with some men and women, and a man hit on me. And I was sort of like, ha, 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 man hit on me because I'm so attractive, so irresistible. Wow. So I drove home and said to Bill, somebody hit on me because I'm so hot, probably.
Just the boots.
And he was like, oh, yeah. And Bill is so great. He's like, yeah, of course. Like, who wouldn't? Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And then Bill went out of town for a few days. He made the mistake of leaving the house. And he was like, oh, you're going to call your little boyfriend while I'm gone? And I'm like, ha, 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 yeah, he's gonna come. My new boyfriend's going to come over. I'll just be like, kids, this is my new boyfriend. So he leaves town, and then I'm like, what does my boyfriend look like? I can't remember. And I couldn't picture his face. So I pull up a picture, and I'm like, oh, my boyfriend's hotter than I remember him looking. You know, it was all a joke until then. But then I had all these free hours at home, and I'm like lying in bed like, wow, my boyfriend's really hot. And then there were actually, like, unfortunately, there was footage of my boyfriend being interviewed. There's video of my boyfriend, so I'm like, Jesus, my boyfriend doesn't back down.
Articulate and aggressive. Not like this hunk of meat I'm married to.
Not like that snoring heap of shit that just left my house. So then when Bill was gone for like 2 days and he called and I said, honey, I didn't even say like, how are you? I was like, honey, I've been thinking about my new boyfriend a lot. I'm sorry. I like immediately apologized and confessed. And then sadly, I treated him to many conversations about my boyfriend. Nothing happened with my boyfriend, also sadly. I shouldn't have given that away.
Yeah, that's right.
Just forget you heard
You'll
that.
read it. I will say that that chapter in the book is so well done. And Perry, again, we've known you guys forever. She was like, I had to flip to the end of the book to make sure they're still married. It's one thing to like sit here and talk about it because all the context you can do it and it's clear, you know, everyone knows. But like, what did that feel like to put down on paper? Like, how terrified were you to be like, this thing's going to go out into the world?
That chapter in particular was really tough. And in fact, it's funny that I'm talking about it so much now because I'm comfortable with it now. It's weird to be a writer. I mean, it's sort of like you kind of have this, it's almost like until you have the version that feels the most true. I mean, that's what's strange because as you're writing things, you know, the first few drafts of that chapter were very defensive. It was like, don't worry, nothing's going to happen. You know, I love Bill so much. No. You know, it was almost like the books about marriage that I don't like. That's what it sounded like.
We're two gnomes by a burbling book. But, yeah.
Yeah, like you can't be defensive. You can't be like protecting the reader from the truth. And so once I started to realize, I mean, part of it was like actually expressing how deluded I became around it and how obsessed I became around it, like, and why was I obsessed, you know, and understanding like that it was the complete and utter lack of interest on the part of my new boyfriend that made me the most thrilled and excited about him. You know, there were a lot of layers of getting to understand why I was in that situation. And actually, I mean, and this is not a gloss, once I had first of all, talking about it with my husband actually made our relationship much better. I mean, it was sort of like I kept kind of upping the stakes and coming back to him like, don't you think it would be great if all married people took a little vacation with just somebody else, you know, like on an island, just once a year? You know, don't you think that would be super fun and it would just reinvigorate you and you could come back and be a better wife and a better mother? You know, I was pitching these different scenarios, you know, and
You're
Bill,
a great salesperson.
I'm very convincing and persuasive. But, you know, Bill just kind of stuck with it and thought it was hilarious. I mean, he basically saw right through it and was like, you're going to get into a situation with this person and be so grossed out. And I was like, no. You don't understand. I've imagined it 1 trillion times and it's not gross. It is so hot. I mean, it's like slow-mo. The music is amazing. I look incredible. Well, actually, I will say this, if it's okay to say something a tiny bit dirty. Is that okay?
Yeah, we're really worried about crossing the lines here.
I don't know if this made it into the book, but one of Bill, is it okay if I say this thing about? Yeah, he's like, yeah, do what you want, whatever. So one of the first things I said to him, I was like, God, I don't know, it's so gross, but I feel like I just want to. I understand why people cheat. Like, it's the lying. You get to lie, and then you go to some hotel, and you're cheating, and it's because you lied first that it's so hot because you don't even, your husband doesn't even know where you are, and that's great. Like, that's the good part. And I never get to cheat. And he's like, oh, poor you. You have a good marriage. I'm like, but a lot of people get to cheat. It's an experience. It's a part of an experience. And then he's like, okay, here's what would happen. You'd reach into his pants, and I was like, ew, gross, I'm not going to reach. I'm not going to reach into his pants.
Or how do you imagine Bill eating a submarine sandwich? That is pants business. It's like a Ken doll.
Oh yeah, Ken doll's so hot. Yeah, it's bad. It was, I just hadn't gone down that road before. And I think that, it was hard not to include that in the book because it's instructive to understand that when you're honest and you work through the stages, you're sort of like become more and more realistic about what, I knew that I didn't want to trash my marriage. I was being careful because I knew I wanted to keep Bill and I didn't want to go anywhere. But part of it was like just coming face to face with the version of the story that didn't exist in my imagination, but I would actually be real. I almost think in some ways it was possible to sort of run with this because I never saw this guy. It was like, I think that it's easier when you have more access to someone where you're like, yeah, he's kind of gross, whatever. He's just a person.
Yeah, but when you watch
he probably snores too.
When you watch their interviews, it's hard. That's
I know exactly.
Caliente. For sure. You also you talk a lot about your kids and a lot about parenting, which is obviously a big part of a lot of marriages. And I wonder, I asked Bill this earlier, I won't tell you what he said, but I wonder how you imagine, most kids don't get to read about their parents' marriage in some way, certainly not in some kind of honest way, and I wonder how you imagine they might respond.
Well, okay, they are pretty used to me as a human being, so it's not going to be that surprising, sadly. I've kind of, the crush chapter worried me. I do make jokes constantly about finding a boyfriend, which they don't appreciate. But
that's so unfathomable.
But I did kind of walk them through the crush chapter a few times, and the first time that I told them about it, I have daughters who are 15 and 12, and the first time I said, I'm worried that if this book is popular, if it's not popular, no one will care at all, and we don't have to worry about it. But if it is popular, then I feel like people might say rude things to you out in the world, and I'm a little bit worried about that. So I have to kind of prepare you for what's in the book. And they're like, okay, whatever. And I'm like, okay, so, and I explained this chapter to them. I had this crush, it was really dumb, and I told Bill about it the whole time. And so at the end of it, Ivy, my younger daughter, I shouldn't say her name. I try not to say their names because I don't like their names and faces to be involved in my bullshit. But
Avery.
But I said, what did you say?
Avery.
Yeah. So Avery said. So my younger daughter at the end of my spiel said, the weird part is the marriage. Like, the strange thing is that anyone ever gets married at all. All this other stuff seems pretty normal, but and then my older daughter was like, yeah, marriage is ludicrous. So I was like, okay.
We as good Episcopalians put our kids through confirmation, and they both came out of that process as like avowed atheists. And so you're saying, having put your children through the process of showing them a good marriage, they're going to come out never getting married.
Yes.
I think that's really remarkable work.
I've been dressing like a truck driver for years, and both of my kids are pretty feminine too. Like, everything is a reaction.
Well,
I don't know. That's a bad example, but whatever.
You probably a lot of people may know you through writing Ask Polly, which is a really, you're known for your long form writing and for your answers. I think a lot about, I kept thinking this as I was reading the book, what if this were just the longest question ever submitted to Ask Polly, who is this very, for folks who don't know, this very wry and acerbic but deeply thoughtful advice columnist, which is also you. That is, yeah, well, anyway, you write it. It isn't you. This is, now I'm so confused. Who the fuck am I talking to? I wonder if this book showed up for Polly, what would Polly say to?
Oh, what would she say about the person who wrote it?
Yes.
Oh, get over yourself. I mean, I think, okay, so what would the person be asking? Should I stay with my husband or something like that? Like, what would they be asking?
Oh, no, I can't even formulate.
It's not really, I mean, the book isn't a question. It's not a question. It's like is it a, I don't know. That's it. I mean.
She'd say, hey, Polly, am I okay?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways that's the thing I grappled with probably while writing the book, right? Like, is it normal to be, I mean, I guess that by the end of the book, I think that I came to the conclusion that it's not, it is normal to question everything, but it's not that, at some point, I mean, I think that I actually do think that I sort of reached this place where I was like, are you just gonna keep sort of relitigating these small things that bug you? Are you gonna stay attuned to these irritating things, you know? Or are you going to start to try to be more attuned to the good things? And I mean, part of it is that Bill and I just had so many really honest conversations about our marriage because we had to, because I was writing about everything. And I think that, I don't know, it's like my feelings for him sort of opened up a little bit. I mean, I was sort of forced to face how kind of withholding I could be, and how I, you know, when you're a storyteller, it's like you're always kind of deciding what the story is, and sometimes you just have to put down the story and show up and be open-hearted and say, whatever this person is, I know already that I love him and accept him. And also, there was a thing where I sort of started to say, I started to notice how Bill comes to, don't do the tears for the live audience. I notice how he comes to me with love and affection every single day. Oh, I want to get you too.
Yeah, no way.
I love Carter. He comes to me with an open heart every single day. You know, I mean, I in the morning am like so busy, so important, just writing my super important things. Please don't look at me, don't talk to me, you'll mess up. I'm writing pure poetry here. Do not interrupt it. And Bill's just like, hi, honey. You know, I always look great to him. I mean, I've become kind of a monster, partially because he's so nice to me. But I started to appreciate the fact that I had this source of love and encouragement in my life, instead of just saying, whatever, you know, he's annoying, get it together, why can't you do things exactly like me? I started to see, like, oh my God, you know, he's, in some ways, he's like in some, you know, I hate to say this because it sounds so wrong, but he is really the mommy that I always wanted in some ways.
Man, this is...
Not dirty.
I did tell Bill.
Such a good mommy.
I was like, I really hope Heather says something tonight that you haven't heard about the book. I think maybe that's it.
She's a really good mommy. I mean, today I was feeling really bad, and I said, I just couldn't sleep last night. I've just been doing a lot of promoting, and just like you have to be on, and it gets kind of tiring. And I've been very confident and calm, and I've finally started to fray. I was just like, oh, I have like 3 interviews tomorrow. You know, you get sick of yourself, even me. But this morning I was like, I was crying, and I was like, I'm just tired, and I just don't even like myself right now. And I said, and Bill was just rubbing my shoulders, and he was like, it's okay, you're fine. And I was like, I shouldn't need a mommy all the time. And he goes, it's okay, you're my mommy too.
Man, this is the weirdest relationship I've ever heard.
You're really, really twisted people.
I think the best books have this, like a phenomenal arc, and I will say the thing that you see so clearly in this is, like the first chapter is still the first chapter, and I think that is true throughout, but you, as a person in this book, you evolve so much, and I just think, and I think in part of that, because of, and you say that, like in part, a large part of that is because of the marriage, and because of Bill, who is husband, father, mommy. I mean, he's really doing a lot of work there. That wasn't really a question.
Well, I mean, you said I evolve a lot because, and partially through the marriage and because of the marriage. And that's absolutely true. I mean, I think that for a lot of people who, I mean, I love my mother. She's amazing. But for a lot of people who, you know, due to personality differences between their parents and themselves, and due to whatever their family systems are that are screwy, and due to just growing up in the 70s at all, there are ways that you just don't, you know, you go into your adult life not knowing how it feels to be really cared for, and how it feels to lean on someone, and how it feels to, you know, show the worst parts of your personality and have someone really love you in spite of and because of those things. And I think that I immediately felt the difference when after our first year of marriage. I immediately started to feel like, I mean, there was a cold feet period, you know, but once we were settled, yeah, what's that?
In the marriage.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, getting engaged was really a low point, as I said.
Yeah, exactly. As it is for most of us.
And then the wedding was sort of rough, but then by the end, you know, it's like one of those things, like a funeral, like it's like purgatorial for a reason, and then you land at the end of it, and you've gone through the rite of passage, sort of. But there was a point where I realized that I was just becoming a better person because I had support real support for the first time, and I could bring anything to Bill and be heard. And he's very happy to follow my fucked up trains of thought every day. And my writing was getting better. You know, I was getting more confident. I mean, I was like a teenager learning to trust herself, kind of. And I feel like you know, in writing the book, I remembered how much I actually, I mean, the thing is, the last chapter of the book is sort of about this, where you realize, like, oh my God, I'm standing on this really firm ground that's been created by my relationship that I've built with someone, and without it, I would really stumble. And it's almost like the idea of leaving or cheating or getting away is partially just built from this idea that you want to tell yourself a story that you're not actually dependent on another human being, because that's gross and sad, and you don't want to be like that. You want to be the hero.
Your own person in the world, that's right.
You just, you know, or, you know, there was a way that cancer played into it, where I was like,
yes.
There was a time when I was facing cancer treatment, and I didn't have to have chemo, but I did have to have surgery, and I was sort of like, I said to Bill, listen, if you don't like the way things turn out, I'm pretty sure I can find a guy who does. You know, and it was sort of like, I was just like, and he was like, no, I'm sure I'll be fine with things turn out. And I was like, I just feel confident that no matter what happens here, I'm pretty sure I can find another guy who likes the cut of my jib. Because I'm just that kind of woman that men just like me a lot. So don't worry. If you're grossed out, I'm going to be fine. You know, and it was like this kind of ridiculous thing where I didn't want to give in to the idea that I could be unattractive or that he might not be attracted to me. I had this like triumphant story. And I think there are just a lot of times in your life when you're jolted by something and you want to be victorious and on top of it and capable and I'm in charge, I'm in control. And part of showing up for love is actually admitting that you're not in control. And part of showing up for life is really about leaning into the uncertainty of every single fucking day and embracing it. Embracing the fact that you don't know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And you don't know, you know. You all right?
You're right.
Yeah, sorry. I hate it when people ask me. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen next. So, yeah.
Well,
just,
I can't wait for folks to go through the whole thing. Heather can't either, really. I'm actually a little more vested in it than she is. But I think the story is super amazing. We have time for kind of one more. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, like, what, given this, hey, like how you feel being done with this, and then where you go next, what you explore, what you write about next, what interests you to do after Foreverland.
I really like the idea of writing about. I know that feeling. I hate that feeling. I really like the idea of writing about sort of my mom in a real way. I mean, I always write about my mom, my poor mom. I better tell her. I better drop.
Yes, but you've been demoted. Bill's my mommy now. You can be like my aunt. It's going to work out great for you, Mom.
My poor mom. Really. You know, there's a way that like returning to Durham has been really interesting. I don't know. We have a large yard that we have no real handle on. That's going to be kind of interesting to figure out what that's going to be like.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of struggling with shit. You know, this book, I guess part of it is that this, I really am proud of this book and I love this book. And so it usually, I mean, when I wrote my first memoir, I was like, I'm never writing another, I'm so bored by myself. I'm done. I'm not writing any more memoirs. But writing this book, I'm like, I think this is what I do. I just tell people all about everything about myself. I mean, it's weird. I feel like, what will my next memoir be? Which is probably, I mean, I don't know. But Ask Molly, my newsletter that's evil, I also think should be a book, too. An evil book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
evil book.
Yeah, so that maybe will be a nice little, you know, a little change of pace before I go back into, now, here's what I'm angry about now.
Like Taylor Swift.
I'm not really selling it. I thought I was a salesperson.
No,
Yeah, I don't know.
Everyone is going to read the book, right? Are we all reading the book? Fantastic. And
It's
is
a good-
everyone going
it's
to
a good
read
book.
Molly Polly Mommy? Which I think is
Yeah.
going to be your fifth book.
Wow, you should be my manager.
All right, guys, this has been super fun. I think we are going to wrap there. I think you guys, kind of know how the book turns out, Heather lives. But there's some moments where you might not think so. And we can't wait to be back here for the next book, one of your books, right back in this room. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here. Read the book in order, though. Don't flip around. You gotta start in the beginning and read it all the way. Don't flip to the anger chapter, just for example, and you'll get confused.
So we didn't even ask about Walter Kern.
But thank you.